Hello. Things are a bit tricky at the moment, aren't they? I'm stuck indoors, fortunately. I've got the test card girl for company, but I could do with yours as well. Shall we watch an episode of Doctor Who? I'm going to sit on my sofa. You can sit next to me or behind it. I'll chat to you. I mean, that's all I can do because this is how it's going to be. But I'll throw in some facts, some thoughts, some observations. I haven't, however, chosen the story that we're going to watch, and nor have you. I've got a special guest to pick an adventure and to nominate their favourite things about it. One per episode and one bonus one. And we're going to watch along and see if we can identify what those favourite things might be. And we're going to accentuate the positive and remind ourselves that Doctor Who takes us to our happy times and places. Welcome to my house. I'm going to watch a Doctor Who story nominated by a friend of mine. I've asked them to tell me what it is they love about it, and I have to guess what their favourite things are.
Hi Toby, my name is John Cooper and I'm a comedian and illustrator. The story I've chosen is Time Flight because I think it's amazing and imaginative and has my favourite Doctor Who in it and the supersonic aeroplane Concorde, and I remember telling you it was my favourite story and you telling me it was rubbish. So it's not, it's amazing.
Well, tonight's going swimmingly so far. I'll tell you all about that and this in a moment. But if you've managed to get your hands on your remote control, whatever it is you use, please press play now. Oh, it's been quite an evening. I was intending to polish this off fairly quickly, and it's taken me about an hour and 3/4 to find the remote control. There's nothing temporary about this limiter. I'm probably going to be mean about some of the technology in Time Flight, but you know what, people will look back on us in the future and go, why did they have a thing that you couldn't use, hasn't got any buttons on it, the Blu-ray player, that you couldn't use unless you could find a piece of equipment approximately the size of a microbe. Anyway, it's Time Flight, which I thought was going to be the most of my problems this evening. But we will address that because this is a positive podcast / videocast. And one of the reasons for doing this, John Flint, who's in The Crusade as Sir William de Preo, I know a rather sad story about him, but this is early days for this, and I'm not sure if this is the right medium to unveil a tragedy. I might take advisement on that and talk in more detail when I get to do The Crusade, where he has rather more to do. He has some lovely scenes with Jacqueline Hill as Barbara, and I was rather disappointed when I watched this many years later to realise how little he does, because he was an actor from the Hartnell era, you know, illustrious. Be quiet, Alexa, don't you ruin my life as well. Technology is besetting me this evening. We should be doing the Seeds of Death, so I could talk about putting all your eggs in one basket. But this podcast was designed to be positive, and there's nothing worse than actually looking around for somebody to talk about or write about something that you love or that you like, only to find them be mean about it. And we're currently in the midst of coronavirus and various schisms between people, politically, ideologically, and even in the world of Doctor Who. And so actually it's quite timely that John Cooper, my good friend, fine comic, chose Time Flight, and in his introduction that you'll have just heard, sort of said when he told me it was his favourite story, I said it was rubbish. I hate me for doing that. When somebody enthusiastically says to you, I like this thing, like, oh God. So in a way, I've been, you know, I've had a shot across my own bows early on in this to sort of point out, you know, that I'm as guilty of the things that I'm reacting against in this podcast. And here we have the season story arc, the death of Adric, being addressed. Now, I think I'd missed the beginning of episode 1. I might talk about that later as well. When this was on, so I don't think I'd seen them sort of address the death of Adric. Adric has died in tragic circumstances. One of the most memorable parts of my childhood. And of course, they addressed that at the beginning of this story. And Peter Davison sells it very, very well. He's such a good actor. And essentially they go, Adric is dead. It's not that kind of show. Let's just get on with it. And in fact, that was sort of telly of the time. There weren't, in things like Juliet Bravo and all the sort of episodic telly that you watched, Bergerac, things like that. There was nothing that sort of hung around to distract from what was going on this week. A different way of doing things. And I have to say, I love the new series, but when at the end of The Runaway Bride, the doctor said her name was Rose, I was like, no, she's got. Oh, we're not gonna be banging on about her. And I love Rose, and I was really sad that she went, but she's gone. Have an adventure on a planet I've never been to before. I don't want you crying. Although, of course, all of that stuff is so well done, but. This is real. He's basically said we've drawn a line under Adric. In fact, we're going to have, as soon as we hit Heathrow Airport, we're in caper mode. But as a youngster, and as part of the appeal with Doctor Who, I think is always, where are they taking us this week? Or the start of a new adventure is always what are you unleashing that's fresh and new, because that was the thing about Doctor Who, is that it does. I always say he doesn't necessarily travel in time and space as much as he travels in genre. You can have, look at this season. Kinder, Black Orchid, Earthshock are almost entirely different television programs, and that's what I love about Doctor Who, is that the TARDIS can land on a freeze frame of Heathrow Airport. And my main, as I say, I'm watching the Blu-ray, by the way, for the first time. I've seen the special features, but I've not watched the adventure. So it's sort of freshly minted, because I thought I don't think I watched any of the stories on this set, and certainly not. Time Flight would not have been top of my list, which is why I'm sort of quite excited. I do remember Airport Control being in a cupboard with files on the back of the wall. But Heathrow itself, this is... credit to John Nathan Turner, actually. And I seem to recall when he submitted the script, because you had to submit the scripts upstairs, didn't you? When he submitted the scripts to his boss went, yeah, that's fine, but you'll never get permission to film at Heathrow Airport. And he sort of went, actually, I've already got filming dates scheduled for here, here, and here. And you sort of go, yeah, because you can imagine what sort of person the boss would have been. Yeah, you'll never do that. You get quite a lot of dismissive people in high up positions who's going, you'll never do that. Whereas they should be going, oh, that's a brilliant idea. Let us know how we can help you. And Nathan Turner, for all of his controversial takes on the show, knew how to grab a headline and filming at Heathrow. And of course, with Tegan's story, Tegan has been trying to get to Heathrow all season. So that's the other story arc. The big bad is the geographical location of Heathrow Airport. And now this is Peter Sellier as Andrews, the security officer. Peter Sellier is a fine actor, and was too young to know who he was when I first watched this, and when I got the sort of Doctor Who magazine with the episode guide, and I was Peter Sellier, because he was around. He was in all sorts of sitcoms. He's been keeping up appearances, and Yes Minister. As I think quite often, I think he's a semi-regular in Yes Minister, or certainly appears in it more than once. But he's sort of Mr. Vicar / civil servant in sitcom, and has had a fine stage career and is still going. Good for him. I think he must be one of the Doctor Who's nonagenarians. I'm guessing he must be 90. And I remember being quite shocked to go, Andrews? Well, I don't even know who that is in Time Flight, and it's a one episode part. He must have just been a bit, just not had all that much going on. Now, I loved all of this as a kid. Sir John Sudbury. And now I assumed that must be some continuity reference. No, it's just thrown in. He's one of those. But Brigadier Lethbridge. That was enough to make my week. The mention of somebody from the past. It's a very Doctor Who fan thing, that instead of enjoying the present, you worry about the future, and you love to be in touch with the past. I'm not speaking for every Doctor Who fan. I am speaking for myself, certainly in my younger years. So, in a sense, you can understand John Nathan Turner doing what he did, which was so often invoke the past, because it went down so well when he did, and I was one of those people. I mean, not a vocal one. I was out in the countryside in the middle of nowhere. Doctor Who was very much a solo pleasure, quiet at the back. But the past, and we mock the past so much now, and I don't think we're any better for it. The past, to me, was hallowed ground where they did things better and properly. I don't know when it happened, when we decided to look at, say, old telly and mock it, which is, again, this is hopefully an antidote to. And again, I've had a reminder of why, yes, some of the technology may be slightly limited on this, but ours isn't all it's cracked up to be. I was so furious. And of course, the more I looked, the more furious I got. I feel like I started looking when I was in Jurassic England. But this is a very different story from the one you have in your mind's eye, because this episode is a mystery of a missing Concorde. We haven't got to the bits that everybody sort of talks about. Peter Davison himself did an interview when he talked about this. Oh, look at that gorgeous shot of the Concorde in the snow. That is so beautiful. I mean, that is $1 million. As I say, Peter Davison talked about that set. He did an interview on a documentary called The Doctors, and said, looked a bit crap. And I know John Nathan Turner wasn't over the moon about that. He wasn't saying Doctor Who was crap. He was saying the set of Jurassic England looks crap. I love the TARDIS on the forklift truck on its side. The TARDIS is brilliant, isn't it? Because it sort of fits in anywhere, whilst looking kind of incongruous anywhere, which is exactly what you want. It's sort of comfortable. It's a comfortable shape and a comfortable colour, but it is slightly old-fashioned and ramshackle, but therefore fits quite quaintly into anywhere. I love the TARDIS on the forklift truck in the snow. What a great image. See, this is looking. In fact, I mean, the studio stuff is quite studio-y, but that's okay. That looks not unlike any drama that would have been on at the time. And this film stuff looks absolutely gorgeous. The Concorde looks great. The snow, there's some fantastic publicity photos. I remember there was a Doctor Who magazine I had very few, which had, did it have Tegan or did it have all of them on there? Can't even remember, but a great shot of them with the Concorde. Richard Easton as Captain Stapley. Now, the last time I watched this, actually, was for a book I wrote with Rob Shearman called Running Through Corridors. And the third volume hasn't been published yet. It is all done in various forms. but I think the thing we both came out of loving with when we watched this was Richard Easton, who gives such a game performance. I always feel sorry for the two men in the cupboard, who I will talk about when they come back. Great shot of Concorde. I'm really loving the airport setting. I think it. Well, obviously the Faceless Ones has an airport, but that feels special because of that. Just the thing of going, oh, let's set it in a place. Let's just mix things up a bit. Give us an interesting setting. Although I mean, I'm no expert, but I don't think that's what airport control looks like. I think it's the filing cabinet in the background, and a man in a brown jumper. I don't know. It just looks like he's lounging around on a Sunday looking for a book to read. And the confusing thing for me as a youngster who wanted to know things was that those two men in the cupboard, one, the man with the moustache, who's Brian McDermott, very interesting and eccentric actor, who I will talk about later, and Peter Dalson, who I haven't seen in anything else, I don't think. He's done bits and bobs, but none that I stick in mind to me. These two, neither of their characters are referred to by name on screen, so I didn't know which one was which for ages and ages and ages until I found out a bit more about Brian McDermott, who was one of the earliest people to, or certainly an early advocate and stander for the referendum party, as was, that sort of became UKIP. And he did, I think, one-man shows about Saddam Hussein and Adolf Hitler. He was a bit of a character, a bit of an eccentric, and yes, a man who wanted an independent Britain and would do agitprop sort of theatre and one-man shows in order to make that point. And ran a theatre company and was a bit of a character. He does lots of what I call clench fist official acting in this, where you show that you're a little bit testy by every time you walk, you got your hand by your side doing that. It's a particular character actor trait in sort of dramas involving boardrooms or testy officials. He's actually not unlike, although I would contend not an actor in quite the same league as Colin Gordon, as the commandant in The Faceless Ones, who is also a testy, mustachioed official. But Colin Gordon, we will wait till we get to The Faceless Ones, which has yet to be done. Keith Drinkle here as Roger Scobie was in a lot at the time, cropped up in all sorts of things, still around. He's in a spin-off video. Is a video? Do you call them videos nowadays? He's in a spin-off called Zygon, and you see rather a lot of him, I have to say. The sort of thing I associate with Doctor Who. But there is something glorious about the fact that there's a slightly saucy, but it's not saucy. It's just got nudity in it to sort of go, we're grown up. We may be from the Doctor Who show, but look, here's a winkle. And it's Drinkle's winkle. Oh dear. This still looks great. The episode has, interesting because it's sort of down as a duff production. Crap, as Peter Davison said. It looks great so far, and the film stuff is really nicely shot. I adored that shot of the Concorde. And there's just something about real metal and rust and snow, sort of things that you don't get in a studio. So they just really help, and they're unusual, because we are so used to stuff being largely in the studio with Doctor Who. Oh yes, of course, this is where it suddenly all goes right. So you're suddenly in the studio, and they're suddenly CSO. I have to say, I don't think that's transmittable today. I don't think you could. We've gone from really nice, convincing film and we're supposed to be in the same place. I know it's an illusion and we're waiting for a special effect to transport us to Paleolithic times or whatever they are. But in terms of the continuity of the visual image, that beautiful film shot of Nyssa, to that videotape shot of the corpses, to this fringy CSO abomination, is that would not pass technical standards now, and it's really odd because the wipe doesn't have them in the same standing positions. Though I was expecting the sort of wipe. I knew it became Jurassic England. I was expecting them to be standing in the same place, which would necessitate the CSO we saw before. They could have done all that previous bit on film, and then cut to videotape after the flash. It would have been a much better cut now. But I am supposed to be accentuating the positive, and it's a very neat idea, and you can never criticise Doctor Who for its ambition. You can't, because what separated Doctor Who from all the other television shows for me at the time was that it did things no other television show did, and Doctor Who should always try to do things that no other television show should do, and sometimes that means not quite pulling it off. But in a world where, like that BBC man said, oh, you'll never get Concorde, well, he did. So actually it was worth a try, wasn't it? So they didn't pull that off. But nobody didn't have a go. And sometimes people have a go and they get it wrong. I mean, as a child, this totally convinced me. I was rather sad for the actor Leon Tai for being bottom of the credits when he was playing the villain. I didn't get that yet because I read the credits. And that building's great. The perspective works there, actually. It's such a big ask to do. That's a decent shot, actually. That little effect shot. I'd forgotten about that. It's a big ask to do this set in a studio. Actually, those rocks are fine, and I do like the three pilots, and I believe that Ron Jones didn't realise that Anthony Ainley would be playing Khalid, which might have, because it's interesting though, because that I'm never seeing this being described as problematic in a way that John Bennett in The Talons of Weng Chiang is, but it's the same thing. Well, I suppose because it is the master in disguise. I suppose it is justified in those terms, but it is. But oh, that's a nice shot of the Doctor and Tegan through the wreckage. That was rendered in a nice point of view shot as well. Credit to Peter Davison. He's always on the ball. Always seeking to make it work and seeking to make it interesting. They're very old-fashioned, aren't they? These pilots. I don't know any pilots, so I don't know if they're. Oh, actually, my friend Mark was a military pilot. But now watching this Blu-ray, it's been cleaned up. The backdrop is Indian Juju Man. I think that's quite problematic as well. Dave Culshaw and Angela Clifford. Now, Dave Culshaw is Barney Lawrence, who had been a Marshman, but had also been one of the androids in Earthshock, so it's quite nice for us to see his face finally. I didn't know you had a New York stopover. Is that Angela Clifford's line? Poor old Angela Clifford. Now that was the plasmatons, which is again another sort of brave stab, isn't it? I think if they didn't have legs, and it's a bit like the Slitheen, isn't it? Is that they're rendered with the visual effect, a bit of bubble bath later on, and the men with legs, like the Slitheen when they were CGI and they were suited. It's difficult to marry them all together. Although the addition of the bubble bath actually helps to meld them there, so that's okay. Yeah, some tricky visuals, I have to say, in the last few minutes. But up to that, it's an intriguing adventure with a testy commandant, Horton or Sheard. And John Flint gets credited above Peter Sellier. Goodness. Right, Leon Neytai right at the bottom. Yeah, that was quite jolly. It's quite a jolly romp so far, but gosh, the budget's a hard one to wrangle. But I'm not arguing with the ambition, and sometimes good solid ambition is worth a cartload of cash or some such. So I have to, I've got to press pause, which I will do now, because I think I'm on Play All on my Blu-ray box set. So, I've got to choose my favourite thing of that. Well, I think it's the film work. I think it's the shot of Concorde on film, that beautiful shot of Concorde. But if I'll take in the whole snow, the TARDIS on the forklift truck. So, the film work on the landing place, whatever it's called, at Heathrow Airport, I thought was glorious. What has lovely John Cooper chosen? Now he's on music, and I've lined him up. I don't know what he's going to say. It's all a mystery to me.
My favourite thing about episode 1 is the plasmatons, because I remember that back in the day, anything that was an amorphous blobby thing would scare me, like the things in the Three Doctors as well. So the plasmatons from episode 1. The best thing about
we will get to episode 2, which I presume was going to say next. So I'll have to go back a bit. That's interesting. The plasmaton. Okay. Well, isn't that because, of course, John is going back to his childhood. I hadn't actually remembered the plasmatons from when I was a kid. I'd not remembered the monsters. I'd remembered Professor Hater, and I'd remembered the Xeraphim. But the plasmatons I'd totally forgotten. So obviously John's hooked in there because they're a memory from his youth. Note to self: somebody who watched the Three Doctors as a kid might choose the Gel Guards if John's anything to go by there. Okay. So I chose the Concorde. John chose the plasmatons, so I didn't guess what he guessed. Let's see if I can guess what he does in future episodes. But that is for another edition. So I'm just going to go and line up the next bit. Sorry, I was going to say I'm just going to go and smash up my Blu-ray player because of this thing, which means I'm now about 2 hours behind schedule. But I could be in Jurassic England. I could be in a BBC studio in the early 1980s having to make Jurassic England on a shoestring budget. So actually, I'm very lucky. Thank you very much for joining me. Join me for episode 2 of Time Flight. Until next time, goodbye.
You can see me on stage as Danny Pensive, and I have a comic out at the minute called Distance, which is all about the crazy things and dark things that have been happening in the world since March. It's a strip that I've started. It's going on Kickstarter. You can find out more about it at johncooper.org.uk. Happy times and places. Bye bye.